this. In Sanskrit, it says atato brahma jignasa, which means that human life is a unique opportunity. It's a portal through which one can ask the biggest questions. As an example, why do I have to die? What's the main purpose of life? Is there anything beyond this one life? Or was there anything before this life? Have I always existed, and so forth? And how can I achieve the ultimate purpose of life? One of the encouraging aspects of the Vedas is that they say, yes, you can, especially from the human form of life. It's specifically designed as the human body to understand causality and to be able to contemplate one's place in the universe and to think about the ultimate goal of life. So there have been a long line of teachers who have passed on the essence of the wisdom of the Vedas over time, which is important because it's not only theory, it's also shown by example. So there are teachers called acharyas, coming from the Sanskrit word achar, which means to act properly. These teachers have, over millennia, passed on the teachings of the Vedas. They have helped to essentialize them, and they've also shown by example how to enact them in one's daily life. One of the very recent acharyas named Bhakti who is in the 1800s, had given this statement, every living being can rise in due course of time, as an indication or an encouragement for all of us to be patient with the process of bhakti yoga and to take it up step by step. There's several elements that I'll talk about today that are the fuel by which we can move forward, be propelled on our path in bhakti yoga. And we'll take some time for questions, for reflections, anything that you hear that you would like to note in any of the presentation that I make today. And one point is in the title, every living being can rise in due course of time, is that we are living beings. Beyond just the physical body, we are the consciousness within the body. Without the consciousness, the body immediately disintegrates or begins the process of disintegration. We are the sustaining force within the body, and we are categorically different from the body or mind or even the intelligence that is the corpus or the body that we're inhabiting right now. And to rise means, according to the Bhagavad Gita, which I'll probably quote from multiple times today, is to come to full awareness of our existence beyond the body. There's a question from the student of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. This is a dialogue that takes place at Kurukshetra. Interestingly, just before a battle begins, and the great warrior Arjuna asks his chariot driver to become his teacher, and then he inquires from him many things. One of them is, what is the symptom of, or what are the symptoms of somebody who has achieved self-realization? One of the first things he says about that is that when one becomes aware that there are desires and thoughts that are constantly moving through our mental system, but we notice that we're different from them. And one's also satisfied by one's own sense of existence. It says Atmanyeva Atmana Tushta, which means that one's satisfied in oneself. This is a preliminary symptom of self-realization, he says. And this type of declaration of symptoms of self-realization is the meaning of rising. In other words, we're rising above a conception that I am simply a physical body, that I belong to a particular culture, or even that I belong to this world at all. There's a clarity that comes from those who practice bhakti yoga that the temporary material world is not my home and I have a higher destination. I'll keep it simple like that. So I'm going to go to a few slides, and the purpose of showing these is to stimulate some conversation. So if you have some thoughts or questions, please feel free to either put them in the chat or to just raise your hand, and then we'll call on you, and then you can speak or just speak up if you wish. So in slide number 3, human beings have a unique capacity to improve themselves. Quoting from the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a statement, Labba sudurlabham idam bahusambhavante, which means that there's a kind of progression that consciousness goes through in various, transmigrating to various physical bodies. And when one comes to a human body, one has a unique opportunity. Labha means to gain something. Sudurlabha means it's very rare. There are a lot more species and varieties of species that are non-human. They don't have the same facility as a human being. This is one of the premises given in the Veda, that we have a unique capacity. And it means that we can become cognizant of ourselves. We can also employ our free will to improve ourselves. And there are various analogies given in that regard about how to do that, and a kind of pathway to guide us on in the process of bhakti yoga. Interesting in that phrase, human beings, I already talked about a human being as a unique portal, but capacity. Capacity means, it's a Latin word, it means what you can hold. We all have a certain capacity, but that capacity can be increased by practice to understand spiritual knowledge. JM, pray Manish to put something up. Let's hear what he said.
Prime Minister is saying we
We can
can
see
see
that.
we can see that through the material advancement, but it's the imperfect use of that unique capacity.
I see. You're saying material advancement could
Yeah,
be.
I wanted to say that, I mean, humans have this capacity to, you know, to get better, but I think we're putting it on the material side instead of putting those faculties into
Yeah,
advanced.
okay, I see what you're saying. In fact, there's terminology for that in the wisdom literatures. It's two phrases, sukriti and duskriti. So the preface, su and du, mean respectively good and bad. And so kriti comes from the root word kri, which means to act, to do something. And when you use your intelligence or even your expertise that flows from your intelligence to do something bad, that's called duskriti. And when you use it for the proper purpose and for your ultimate good, it's called sukriti. So it very much lines up with that idea that somebody can be extremely expert at doing things that are detrimental to themselves and to others. And that's a dichotomy that we face here in this world, that we're surrounded by opportunities to do the wrong thing. So it takes practice to rise above that. So one of the ways in which we have a unique capacity is that we can refine our intelligence so we know the difference between what's good for us or what's bad for us. Two other phrases are shreyas and preyas, means that we can understand what's for our ultimate good and what's not. Even on a mundane level, those who have a clear idea of how to improve themselves, like physically, they may amend their diet or the way they um, keep themselves on a daily basis, whatever habits they have to improve. So that's a uniquely human idea of how to discriminate and figure out what's for my improvement. And when that's wasted, when the human intelligence is wasted, it's such a refined intelligence, but it's used to find different combinations and permutations of the material energy in order to try to exploit it for one's own happiness. We become more and more entangled in it, and that's called duskriti, not for our ultimate good. Thank you for that point, Premanishta. I appreciate it. So the human experience is especially felt when we have a clear idea that we can improve. I think there's a way in which when we're overwhelmed or we feel that it's not possible to improve, we may not try for it, or we may be overwhelmed. So it requires several elements in order to come out of the doldrums of this world. Oftentimes people feel overwhelmed, they feel depressed, they feel that they can't move, or they wonder if there's any use in what they're doing because it seems that the circumstances are dire. So the theme of this and of many of the teachings are that, yes, you can. Yes, you can. In fact, a great senior teacher of Bhakti Yoga that I knew, who was a godbrother of my spiritual teacher, used to say that the famous syllable Om, which many are familiar with, means the big yes, that yes, you can. It's calling to you, saying, gather up your energies, put your mind to it, because yes, you can rise in due course of time. Om. It's the big yes coming to us from a higher source. So let's go to it. There's 4 elements I want to talk about today that are inherent in the teachings of Bhakti Yoga. And the first one of the 4 is about desire. And this is an important ontological point. There are ways in which some people think that desire means suffering. And let's hear from Sherelle. Hi, Sherelle.
Hi, everybody. Grateful to be here. I come from a room. Just in regards to rising and improve. Sometimes it's like Krishna's stopping you for whatever reason as well. So it's like just coming down to accepting where you're at and what Krishna wants. It could be different to what you want.
You know,
Because even if we do make all those choices and like we're moving in the right direction, sometimes it's just like we want certain results, and that's our purity if we're expecting something back. So yeah, that's the challenge sometimes.
Well, at the very least, one could expect some clarity. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Pratyaksha dharmyam, that a spiritual practice should have the reward of giving us clarity about who we are, and that we'll feel that directly. And another example given in the Srimad Bhagavatam about spiritual practice and advancement in it is that of eating. This analogy comes in the Srimad Bhagavatam 11th canto, where one of the sages from a group of sages called the Nava-yogendras, there's 9 of them together, and one of them says that spiritual practice is analogous with eating. And so in which ways is it analogous? When you eat, he said, you feel that your hunger is being vanquished. By every bite, you feel it's going away. And you also feel that you're getting nourished. And you also feel satisfaction. So those 3 things come naturally when you eat food. And as my teacher in presenting that concept used to say, no one needs to give you a certificate to say that, yes, you're becoming satisfied. You know it for yourself. And you also feel that your hunger is going away. So you can see that directly. And in a similar way, when we take to spiritual practice, then the reward is that it works, and that we naturally sense that we're becoming disinterested in those things that are against our interests, those kinds of activities that we know aren't good for us, and we don't even want to do them, but somehow we feel compelled to do them or forced into it. We get what's called vairagya, which is a natural detachment that from things that aren't for our ultimate. And then it also says we experience for ourselves, we see for ourselves beyond just the material circumstances of the world. We begin to experience an intelligence in the universe from within our own hearts. We experience that directly. And we begin to feel the direct presence of Krishna or the Supreme. So those things come as a natural encouragement. Nothing succeeds like success. So that's helpful. Thank you, Sherelle.
No, thank you.
Now let's talk about 4 ingredients to rise. 4 ingredients for one to rise, and we're rising from, as the Bhagavad Gita says, an entanglement in the material world, which is said to be a labyrinth made up of these 3 gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. And Krishna says, if you continue on the path of bhakti yoga, then he says, guna atita, you'll rise above this confused state or contaminated consciousness, and you'll come to your pure consciousness again. So the first is desire. And desire is the nature of consciousness. Consciousness is always active. You may notice that when you sleep at night, you're still active. For instance, in your subtle body, you may be running or trying to catch an airplane or looking for something or talking to someone. And when you wake up, then you go on with your activity. Krishna, only when you're in an awake state, you have clarity that I was sleeping, now I'm awake. And even when you leave this present body, which is an inevitability, that is Krishna says, it's not that you die. It's not like the light bulb goes out and there's no more life there. But you transmigrate from this body to another appropriate vehicle or another body. And this is awarded to us according to the state of our consciousness when we leave the present body. And we go on. And so desire, or we can say even emotions like affection or love, the desire to serve, or gratitude, these are naturally inherent in us as conscious beings. Of course, as Premanisha was pointing out, they can be misapplied. And I mean, there are songs and poems. One of them comes to my mind. There was a song that had the refrain, looking for love at all the wrong places. This is sort of the theme song of the material endeavor. We want love. We want to do the right thing or serve, but we misapply it in the objects that are temporary or in relationships that have no hope of surviving. So this desire, when we are aware of our desire, aware that we're alive, we have life, and that there's a prospect beyond just the entanglement of the material world, the idea of living happily ever after. Happily ever after. HEA. I remember my parents reading me stories when I was a kid, and sometimes they would end with, and then they lived happily ever after. And I thought about that, and it came to my mind, well, how do they do that if we're all going to die? Because how do you live happily ever after? First of all, everyone has ups and downs, and wouldn't it come to an end at some point? But where would one even have that idea? Where would that idea come from if it didn't exist somewhere? For instance, if you find a rare gold coin in the middle of a desert, maybe you're trekking across because you want to find yourself, you would assume that it comes from some other source. So when you find some unusual idea in this world, which is you'll live forever in happiness, which obviously isn't possible in the context of this short material life that we have. And hopefully I don't have to go into all the details of why that's not possible. But that's unusual. And so where did it come from? It comes from somewhere. So the idea of the sages and the ancient Vedas is you do live forever and you do have desire, but it has to be purified. Your life, consciousness, and desires have to be purified. And when one realizes that I exist, I've always existed, I always will exist, and there is a state beyond misery which we can achieve, then one may develop a desire for it. If I hear about it and I think maybe it's possible, this is called an awakening, sometimes called Shraddha. Shrad means the heart, and da means that you want to place your heart into something. And when we have this sense that I would like to try for that because it seems altogether possible to me, maybe in a seedling form, or maybe an analogy of a spark. It starts with a spark of desire. The first point is that help that spark to grow. Find circumstances where that desire can increase. And we find this in mundane circumstances as well. For instance, if one wants to be an accountant, then you'll find an association of accountants to go spend time with. Wouldn't you? Any accountants here? If you go spend time with accountants, then you may bring that fledgling desire to be an accountant to a blaze. that spark of desire into a blaze, or any other kind of endeavor. So in bhakti, this first stage is very important, that the spark of desire to attain something which is metaphysical, or which is beyond what we think we could ever attain, is sort of the spirit of that first question I mentioned from the Vedanta Sutra. It's the very opening statement of this important book on how to be spiritual, which says, yes, you can do it. So therefore you should inquire about it, how to do it. And that indicates a desire. One might be reticent to even ask the question if you think, oh, it's not possible. It'd be foolish of me to even ask. Well, Om, yes, you can do it. Take it. Ask the questions. And if one gets that spark of desire in one's heart, this is the very beginning. It's awakening. So that's called Shraddha. Shrad means the heart, and da is an active verb. It means where you place something. So when you start to put your heart into it and you say, yeah, this is possible, then that's the very beginning point. And the practice of bhakti is to increase that desire on a daily basis. JM, let's see what we got here.
Yeah, Ankit just asked, can we say that a burning desire to improve requires two things: a clear recognition of our present self and a willingness to let go of our current identity? Since our identity drives our actions, must a desire to improve first convince us that a new identity is better than our old one?
Yeah, that's a reasonable statement. If you have an idea that I'm something more than just a physical body, then you may inquire more about it. And this can be a jumping off point, definitely. Okay. Before I go any further, I'm watching the time, so we make sure we go through all of these. Let's see if anybody has any reflection, anything you heard so far that stuck with you, or if you have a question that you think will expand the conversation and the ideas that I'm presenting.
Go ahead.
Uh, I was just thinking that this desire can be also, when we are in the right frame of work or with the good association, then seeing other having a, contented or happy life, that desire could also emerge from association as well.
Absolutely. And this is one of the main points that Krishna makes in the Bhagavad Gita. The word for cause is karanam. And then he says the cause for whatever situation you're in now is karanam, the cause, guna, sangasa, means whatever way you've associated yourself in this world has led to where you are now. I mean, it seems like a simple equation, but often we think I'm here randomly. In other words, there's no meaning to the world, and I just got here by chance. But no, Bhagavad Gita says whatever you have now is perfect. It's perfectly arranged for you because of the way you've associated yourself previously. So that leads to a rather exciting conclusion. I mean, of course, this is self-help 101. Anybody will tell you this, that when you realize that you have an opportunity to adjust your circumstances by choosing your association judiciously, then you realize, wow, I can do more. I mean, why do people decide to go to a better school or to associate with an exalted teacher? Because they know that once you do, you're going to improve yourself. That's the cause. So yes, this is one of the main tenets of the practice of Bhakti Yoga also, is to search out the best kinds of association. If you get around people, well, let me put it like this. If you're the smartest one in the room, then you're in the wrong room. So try to find those circumstances where you're around people who are more advanced than yourself. Because if you're there and you're respectful and you keep your ears open, then you're going to improve. It's almost like that airdrop that we have. I don't know if I've never had anything but a Mac, but on Mac, you can airdrop things. And it's kind of mystical. You have it here, airdrops over there. And the same way, that mystical process takes place by association. You get around somebody who's has a bigger flame and they have realized knowledge, they can drop it in to you just by the hearing process. That was an important point. Thank you very much, Radhakripa. Deeply appreciate it. Ah, Nitya, you're judged by the company you keep. Yeah, in fact, isn't it, Nitya, that some people say that you can understand where a person's going by the association they keep also. We can predict our future by who we're hanging out with. And if you don't like the way they're going, then be aware that you're going that way too. Okay, let's go to the next ingredient so I keep the wheels turning. And the next one is to take in the right information. So there are, as I mentioned at the outset of this, lines of knowledge that have been passed down from the source of the universe. This is called parampara. It's passed down from one person to the next. An example I heard early on when I first started practicing bhakti yoga, which charmed me, was that if you go to the top of a tree where there are very ripe fruits, you don't throw the fruit down to the ground, but you pass it hand by hand until it gets to the bottom of the tree. And in a similar way, there's a very careful transmission of knowledge, otherworldly knowledge, metaphysical, spiritual knowledge that's passed down from teachers to students who then become teachers, who then pass it down to students. And it comes down painstakingly and in such a way that we can take advantage of it. And so getting that information, it comes from two sources. One is the knowledge itself, which is called Shastra, or the codes of knowledge, the Vedas. They're spoken originally and memorized and then passed down. And then at a certain point in history, they're written. I was just in London and I went to the British Museum. There's a whole section of the museum there that displays ancient books. I would say 90% of them are about spiritual knowledge. And I just found it fascinating in there. I took a group in with me and talked a little bit about the research that I'd done for a book I wrote about the history of books and printing and so forth. And you can just see the impetus of human beings since a time immemorial to record knowledge and pass it on to other people. And so that those codes get passed down orally and also in written form. So that's one source of the knowledge that we can take advantage of. And then there are those that I mentioned who have imbibed the knowledge, and they can also teach it to us. And so finding that is one of the main points that is Krishna makes in the Bhagavad Gita, that if you want knowledge, he says, Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya uparakshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina, means that you should try to find somebody who has taken the knowledge, digested it, is acting on it, has realized it, and they can teach it to you. It's fairly straightforward. And so there's these two sources of expert information, or the information that show us how to walk the path. So after we have a burning desire, we should consult those who have the knowledge and also be fortified by hearing from the Shastra. Shastra means that which is guiding us on the path. The third one is mentorship, means that it's a team sport. Bhakti is a team sport. Means that we should try to take guidance from all sides, because on any path and in executing any practice, there's always distraction and the tendency to lose one's balance. And so fortifying oneself by having mentorship for alignment is the next step. And finally, regular practice. And we'll go into these four. So in the next slide, we talk about the ingredients for deep desire or increasing desire. So this analogy of the spark, we want it to conflagrate. We want it to increase. So when you have it, take advantage of it. It's one of the points. Don't delay, don't procrastinate. Because if you have the desire, you don't know how long you have in the human form of life to take advantage of it. So do it as soon as you can. And don't fear failure, but rather fear the slow fade of the desire. Try to keep it alive. It's a story I heard from a time in which people warmed their houses just with stoves that required coals burning. And if your stove went out, you couldn't relight it because it wasn't a gas stove or something. They had these little boxes that you could take. They had a wooden handle, and you could go to a neighbor and ask them for some coal from their fire that was already burning. And rather than trying to restart the fire, which was difficult pre-matches, you could take that coal home in a little box, put it in back in your stove, and relight the fire. So in a similar way, there's a way in which one of the main tasks in practice of bhakti yoga is to make sure the fire increases and don't let it go out. And if it does, then make sure you're around those who can help you to restart it. So don't put it off. Okay, JM, we have more. There great comments rolling in.
So Lisa just posted. She's saying, in studying Vedanta, I've come across the notion that realizing the self is the only worthwhile activity in this world. Though I wonder if transcending this reality is not the only important task here on earth, that we have some important work to do and there is something special about being alive here. Shouldn't we also be enjoying the beauties of earth without getting lost in it?
Oh, that's such a nice statement. I love that. Especially what you said at the end. Shouldn't we also be enjoying the beauties of earth without getting lost in it? And this conception of being lost is there in your Bhagavatam. It comes in this second chapter, second canto of the Bhagavatam, where what's the definition of illusion? So it says, Riteratam yat pratyeta na pratyeta chatmani tadvidyad atmano mayam yatabhaso yatatamaha. Everything is comes from one source. This is one of the premises of the Bhagavatam. It starts with Janmad Yasayata. Everything comes from one divine source. So it's all interrelated, right? And it's all related to the source from which it comes. But if somehow or other you see something separate from that source, Ritertam yat pratyeta, your vision is like that. It says that's illusion because there is nothing separate. You're seeing what's shadow or darkness. So you find in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna resonates with what you're saying here, that you should see everything in relationship with the Supreme and how it's. So he gives these examples, for instance, in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, when you see the ocean, you should be overwhelmed by the grandeur of it and feel like, oh, this is representative of the unlimited nature of our source, or through the senses when we touch the world. There's two ways to touch it, with the intention of I want to enjoy, or the intention of realizing the supreme. So he says, if you drink water, this is rasoham apsakonteya, and you realize that that rasa, that taste, is actually it's the taste of the divine. What else could you describe it as? And then it talks about the original fragrance of the earth. Punyo ganda prativyam cha means that this is the original fragrance of the earth. Where does it all come from? So the wonderment of seeing the beauty of this world and appreciating that it's a spark that's coming from the original source is one of the main practices of bhakti, in fact. It's an integrated, holistic process. We don't deny anything. In fact, we see how it's all interrelated. It's advaya gyan tattva. It's one truth, but it has variety within it, which is ever fascinating. Thanks, Lisa. Okay, fantastic. I'll do a few more slides. Next one, ingredient, practice. Oh, is that where we are? No, we're not. Yes. Uh, Improvement isn't a single decision, it's a rhythm. So in the beginning of bhakti, there's what's called vaidhi, which means that you should regulate yourself, because your mind can trick you and say like, oh, you've done enough, just take off, take off a few days. Consistency, developing a rhythm in your practice so you can break through or rise above the fetters of the material world. Don't postpone the practice. That's called vaidhi. You do it regularly every day without missing it, but rather postpone distractions. This is what I call the applied procrastination, just like there's pure math and applied math. So they should have a class at Stanford, Chuck, where you could go for applied procrastination. Well, what is that, sir? Well, that means that when there's a bad idea that comes up, you say like, yeah, maybe later, like we do for good ideas sometimes. So this is one of the directives Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita for spiritual practices. When these bad ideas come into our mind, say, yeah, maybe later, I'll do it some other time, but go on with your spiritual practice. And remember that we have an ayu, we have a lifespan. We don't know what it is, though. That's the problem. But we know it has a beginning and an end. So the idea is use your time to invest in your spiritual advancement, and find the places where you're leaking time, where you're missing it, and try to patch those up, because then you build this kind of spiritual integrity where you feel like, I'm really taking advantage of this time. And in that, there's a sense of fulfillment, deep fulfillment that you can't get anywhere else. Okay, we're really chugging along here. Then the next ingredient about guidance is that mentors keep us honest. It's good to have those who can see the gaps that we have in our own practice, because oftentimes we don't see them ourselves. So we should seek those who can guide us. And even in the Bhagavad Gita, we find that Arjuna and Krishna, in the beginning, they're just friends. But then Arjuna turns toward Krishna and says, no, I want guidance. You please show me how to tread the spiritual path. And then Krishna takes that role. So in bhakti, there's those who take the service of helping to guide others. And there's growth in that, because we need the map and we need the mentor also. This is a quote. Of course, the reputation of Hemingway as a writer is there, but I don't know about his private life. But he said, there's nothing noble in being superior to your fellow human. True nobility is being superior to your former self. So one of the tenets of practice is to try to notice how you're improving or have a chart to see how you can make advancement. This is called Sankhya Purvaka. Just as people invest themselves in measuring various aspects of their progress in life, keep charts and so forth, the great sages had a similar practice to make sure that they were treading the path honestly, and they would check in with themselves. In fact, there are various books of self-examination that sages have written to notice, how am I taking to the path? How am I adhering to it? What symptoms am I experiencing myself? Should be self-observant. And the quote, intrinsic in every jiva, jiva means the individual conscious being, is the ability to rise in course of time. The reason I repeat that is because I like the phrase so much. Everything in this world tends to be enervating, taking away our energy or distracting us in one way or another. So keeping a sense of optimism given to us by those who have achieved a modicum of success or complete success in the practice is important. And this is a reminder that it's intrinsic. We're not meant to be entangled. This is an artificial situation that we're in, the sense of being locked into the cycle of birth and death, to be blunt. But we're meant to rise. And you notice that life succeeds everywhere practically. I've seen a little seed gets in a crack in the pavement and suddenly it grows out and expresses itself, reaching for the sun. You can even break the pavement open. So life is like that. And that's what we are, jiva. We're life. We're conscious beings. So we should feed the consciousness, and we should set our course on rising, rise above the most material nature, and be aware of the fact that that's what human form of life is for. And the last slide, Om Tat Sat means that's all, folks. And it means that this talk was dedicated to the Supreme. Name one way you want to rise for yourself. We have a whole 7 minutes left. I've never done that before. So this is a good time to just think for a minute, and in what way in your practice would you like to rise? What would you like to get better at in your practice of bhakti yoga? And if you have any questions about the practice of bhakti yoga or what ways you could possibly do it, go ahead, Jam.
Yeah, I also want to, in case you are here for the first time or you brought in your friends, please take this time to do introduce them. We'd love to hear from them. But yeah, reflections, questions, or introductions, any new one, or coming back after a long time, please go ahead. And
I
think-
second that. Please introduce yourself if you're just coming in. And Phil said daily reading. Phil, what do you mean by that? Where is Phil? I saw him a minute ago. Yeah, daily reading. Daily, any practice in bhakti, but especially reading. I need to be consistent. I'm going to look up the word consistent. Consistent. Means acting or done in the same way over time, especially so as to be fair, accurate, unchanging in nature, standard, or effect over time. Comes from Latin, standing firm and or still existing. Consist. You know, it comes from originally from nishta. It's cognate. And this is one of the stages of the practice of bhakti, which is called nishta. And you know, the word stand in English means you're able to situate yourself in a particular place. And so getting to steadiness is one of the important stages. So I resonate with what you're saying, Phil. In the practice of reading, it can be very helpful to go through the wisdom literatures every day. Ishvari Radha.
Hi, I just wanted to introduce Chetas, who's here for the first time. Chetas, if you want to say something, please unmute yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Chetas. Nice to meet y'all. And yeah, I like listening to whatever you guys are saying. And yeah, I'm just happy to be here. And I will be here more often. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you, Ishwari Radha, for following up a bunch of times. And I was busy the last few times, so I'm super happy to be here now. And yeah, so hopefully every Monday this happens, and I'll try to be here every Monday. So thank you.
Great, Chetas. Nice to meet you. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
And thanks, Ishwari Radha, for being such a lovely person. Okay.
Chitralekha, please go ahead.
Chitralekha.
I would like to welcome a few of our friends from Australia, in particular Chuck, who is our a regular friend from Bhakti Community of Australia, and he's just come for the first time to Bhakti On, and Beck, who's back after a long time, although she comes regularly for our other programs. And of course, Sherelle and Phil. I'd like to welcome all of you. Thank you.
Great. Fantastic. Hey, Beck. Thanks, Chuck, Sherelle, and Phil. What a nice contingency from Australia. Thank you very much, Chitralekha.
And Chuck posted a comment. I try to move through my day in the mode of service to others. This helps me to humble myself and remember my relationship with the divine.
That's a profound statement. There's so much in it. One of the ways in which I've noticed just in observing sometimes documentaries of people who get overwhelmed with things like fame, material success, and it's a hard energy to handle. Sometimes people feel oppressed by it. Fame, or it could be extreme wealth. And on the other side of the spectrum, and bhakti practice isn't about that you can't touch anything in the world. If you know how to use it, then the more the better, if you know how to use it in service. But the idea is of service and humility, which means understanding that I'm an instrument, I'm not the doer. I'm using things in service, tends to unburden us because it's quite natural for us to serve. And the realization that whatever comes to us, whatever facility comes to us, is coming from a higher source. We're not producing it. We're just there to engage it. That's one of the major themes of bhakti. Fantastic. Anyone else? Any last observations of anything you heard or read? Ishvari Radha.
I just wanted to share what you just said right now about doing work, but you said service. Ever since I started looking at things that I do for my family or anybody else as service, I felt like there's a big change in my whole consciousness. I don't feel that tiredness, that heaviness. I'm like, how does that happen? It's very nice.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a good parting thought. That alignment, in fact, yoga, one might argue, means alignment. It means to be aligned with our highest purpose, with our original source. We're parts of where we came from. And service is the aligning feature. We feel wholly enlivened by the idea of service. And when it's directed specifically towards our original divine source, Krishna. This is what the sages at Naimisharanya say, Lisa, at the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which you're probably already aware of it. It's a conversation in a forest, which is really interesting. And the speaker, Sutta Goswami, is being questioned by a whole group of sages who have assembled there. And they ask, what's the ultimate good and how to achieve it? And he gives this profound statement that the ultimate good is to perform unmotivated, uninterrupted service to the divine. And when you have that, then you're perfectly aligned. And that's called the perfection of yoga. Adishwari Radha. You can speak on mute because we
Okay,
can.
there we go.
Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. I just was thinking of, I watch you when you go around the world, and now here you are, and I feel like you're right in my living room teaching me. So I just wanted to bring up the point of mentorship and the parampara and how fortunate we are that you're here with us and giving us this opportunity to learn from you and ask questions right here in our homes. Thank you, Guru.
Thank you, Adishwari Radha. Thank you very much. I'm deeply touched by that. And I've been looking forward to come back here to Bhakti On. And it's always such a warm spot. Somehow we got into this whole Zoom thing during the pandemic. I mean, we've never come out of it, but it's such a facility to connect from all over the world. It's like mystic power or something to be able to see each other. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I even saw Srivas Pandit showed up here for a second. That's a big deal. He's right there.
Yeah.
Srivas.
Hi.
Thanks for popping in here. Good to see you. There's an ancient tradition from the yogis high in the Himalayas. They like to encourage one another when they see each other, and when they're departing, they have a ritual where they call out this phrase, Hari Bol, which means keep the transcendental vibration going, and they put their hands high in the air. Just thought it might be appropriate since we have to go. I'm going to do it. Hari Bol.
Hari
Hari
Bol.
Bol.
Thanks, everybody. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you.